All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of The Numbers Talk. And this is episode number 4, and I'm super excited that I have my friend, Marni, here today. And she's going to be talking about her journey with the Enneagram. And I'm really excited because so far the numbers that I've got to sit across from me are tricky numbers to get to sit across from you. And so I'm really excited that you are willing to come and be taped and videoed in sharing your experience with the Enneagram. So let's introduce you. We have known each other for 2-3 years. And you are Marni. Tell me your last name, because I sometimes call you Marni many names.
Yeah, that's fair.
What do you want to be called?
Well, so it's Marni McConaughey is my married name.
Yeah.
But I go by Marni Richelle in like the yoga world.
Right. And your business. And,
yeah.
But you also, I still have you in my phone as Marni Butler.
Yeah. That was my original name.
That was your
so
maiden
name.
And then also, if you know Marni on social media, which if you live in Cochrane, you probably do, we know her as the Blissed Girl.
Oh,
so she just, that's why I call you Marni many names, because you're just like so many different things.
That has to do with my number.
Which makes a lot of sense with your number. So why don't you begin by telling us what was your introduction to the Enneagram?
So we were sitting down for coffee at Coffee Traders one time, and we were just chatting. I think we were planning Reclaim or something, a retreat that we did. And we just started to go off on like a more personal note, and you were kind of like looking at me like, and I could see you're like really thinking about things. You're like, can you answer some of these questions? And you wrote down like a couple, like, or 9 starting of a sentence. She's like, and you're like, how do you resonate with those, and what feels like right for you? And then we just started talking about the Enneagram, and I was like, oh man, and you're just like so full of knowledge, and I just love like digging for all that kind of self work kind of stuff.
So that would have been a couple years ago.
That was when I like we met like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think we met initially, and then you guys went traveling, and then I got to know you better after you got back.
Yeah,
that's what my memory tells me. And so that was your introduction to it. And then I do remember going to your mom's house.
Oh, yeah.
And your sister was home from Africa.
Yeah.
And who else was there? You guys.
My mom and then my friend Kat, who's kind of like our sister as well.
Yeah. And so Marni invited me into her mom's home to do kind of like an Enneagram Afternoon.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
And we had tea or coffee or something, and we basically just chatted in Gwen's living room.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, you can help me remember, I think you two sisters, you and Corey, were like, our mom's a 2.
Oh, 100%.
And it was just really obvious.
Very,
and then
very obvious.
I think even that afternoon, she was kind of shaking her head.
She was laughing.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
You guys had some great stories. So she seemed like somebody that was kind of really obvious in her number.
Yeah.
And then your sister, by the end of that day, I think maybe felt like she was a 7.
Yeah. And
that felt true for her. And then Kat was a 5. And then you were just kind of like the facilitator of the afternoon, and you were just like, okay, cool. But I don't remember you on that day going, I'm a...
Well, I was super excited about that because I didn't know my number and I didn't know where I was, but you had given me all this like kind of resources to look into. And the more I dug, the more I was just like, oh, this is like juicy stuff.
Yeah.
And if you go down that road, I'm thinking, man, I need to know what everyone's number is, because it's just juicy information to know,
helpful.
Right? Oh, it's super helpful.
Yeah.
Especially in a family setting too. And if everyone's on the same page and talking a little bit in the same lingo, we know when to like back off and when to like press. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you on that day didn't come up with what you thought your number was, and then we'd meet for coffee kind of here and there, and you and I planned a retreat together even, and did I do the Enneagram at that retreat?
No,
I don't think I did. I think on purpose.
You've said some funny things to me along like this time where you're like, you should check out this number a little bit. Yeah. Just like read into this one.
Yeah, we would just see each other quickly. Like you'd be teaching and I'd be going in, or you'd be coming out, and I'd be like, check out the self-pres 1.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, and then we'd see each other again and be like, that's not me.
Yeah. Hell no, Jody.
Yeah. And so it took a while, right?
It did.
And I feel like it's been more recently in our more recent conversations, like maybe even this year or end of last year, where you're like, I'm a 3, Enneagram 3. So Marni describes herself as the type 3, and I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of what the 3 is. And what I love about doing these interviews is what I'm going to read and what I'm going to say is kind of more what the textbooks would say or the theory or the literature. But the juicy stuff is actually Marni is going to tell us what it's like for her to be a 3. And I think we get a sort of a more granular, refined definition of what it's actually like to embody the energy of a 3. And interestingly enough, the type that Marni is the counter type to her type, which is why it took her, I would suggest, quite a while to find your number. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So Marni, you can help us identify if this sounds like you, okay? So some of the stereotypical kind of skittle along the top of a type 3 would be a type A personality. Pretty driven. Yeah? Yep. Goals, going after things. Yeah. She's shaking her head. So one really cool thing about 3s that I personally love is 3s are really great at self-motivating and promoting themselves, but they're also fantastic at promoting others and motivating other people. And we'll get into this a little bit with what you actually do in our community, but it's textbook. Yeah. Right? It's so...
We got into the right line of work.
You're totally in the right line of work. Very competitive, wants to win, and often not good at a team play as a team player. More just a solo person. Yeah. You know, I know how to do this. I have confidence in my abilities, and I can do it faster. Yeah. 3s can be a chameleon-like character, able to be whatever is necessary of them. So whatever a room or even kind of more larger society requires of them, 3s can often step up to the plate and be that thing with their confidence, with their abilities. Yeah?
Yes. That one, there's some things I would tweak in there, but yes. Okay. I can do that.
Feelings get in the way of accomplishing tasks. 3s can be wonderful multitaskers, and they can get stressed out by the demands for others to be emotional with them, because often 3s can, because they are so good at getting things done and just crushing goals and ticking boxes off their lists, that if feelings kind of come into the equation, 3s can just sort of have this belief that I don't have time to deal with this right now, I have to get back to work. So connections with others can sometimes be pushed to the wayside in service to a list of goals that you're trying to achieve. 3s can be image crafters. It kind of goes back to that chameleon thing. So 3s with 2s and 4s live in the image triad, also called the heart triad. And interestingly, this is really fascinating, the 3 lives right in the center of the heart triad. And so they're the ones that kind of go against the energy of feeling and emotion. The 2s and the 4s are more obvious with it, but the 3 is the one that suppresses it. They're the ones that kind of have to bring out their feelings to kind of grow and experience their fullness. I always find this interesting about the type 3 energy is we in our Western world live in a 3 culture. So we're very much about, if you think about a star athlete or somebody that's on a stage of any sort, right? That's all 3 energy, and we celebrate that in the Western world, and especially the United States. A lot of Enneagram teachers believe that the United States is a 3 nation, although now that I think they've had this new administration for the last 3 years, a lot of Enneagram teachers are thinking, and I agree with this, that it's turning into a 6 culture. It's turning more into fear. Yeah. But because we are the upstairs neighbors to the United States, we have a lot of their views and politics and beliefs that kind of come up through us. I think Canada's more of a 9 nation. We're kind of more just laid back and chill and whatever, right? Yeah. Our national animal's the beaver. Like, that's pretty chill animal to have.
When you're traveling, people are like, oh,
Canadians. Yeah, if they see your little Canadian flag, they just want to have a beer with you. Yeah. But I do think we're influenced a great deal by the energy of the 3 culture in the Western world. So that being said, 3s are kind of at home in this part of the world. They get a lot of celebration. They get a lot of pats on the backs, attaboys, attagirls. And so what can happen to a 3 is they can get going kind of in the wheel of success, and achievement, and it gets celebrated and affirmed by the culture. And not always, but often a 3 can be going along and looking like everything's golden. Everything's just going perfectly well. And it can take one of 3 things for any of us, not just a 3, but for any of us, but specifically 3s, one of 3 things to kind of have them hit a wall. And it's either something happens in the financial world for them, something happens to their health, where they have to all of a sudden just reassess and stop moving, start being instead of doing, or it can be something relational. There's a marriage breakdown, there's something in the family structure that is causing the 3 to actually go into stillness, as opposed to like perpetual motion. So that's kind of a quick over. Would you add anything to that of the traits of the 3? Because when I read the one
just
about
like
the chameleon bit, you said you had something to add to that.
Well, that one I struggle with a little bit, because I tend to get really uncomfortable with having to be a chameleon, but I know I can I can put that on, but it feels so gross to me and so unauthentic to me. Whereas like the social 3, that's like, I feel like that's their power, right? Like they can do whatever.
They're the most, the social 3 is the most chameleon-like of the 3s. Yeah.
Whereas I feel like for me, that exhausts the crap out of me if I'm to have to be a chameleon. Okay. Yeah, so I can. Yeah. I just won't like it.
And that has a lot to do with your subtype.
Yeah.
Just to further a little bit more, so this is true for all of, so just to back up a little bit to talk about subtypes, there's 3 types of each Enneagram number. So there's 3 kinds of 3s, a self-preservation 3, a social 3, and a sexual 3. So regardless of which one of those 3 you are, underneath the dominant number of 3, they will all have the same passion, fixation, and virtue. So the passion of the 3 is deceit. And I think that can be a little bit misunderstood. I like to think of it more as a misrepresentation. So the 3s can be deceitful to themselves because they're in service to looking good, in service to being successful, what is required of me in this group, in my society, in my family, whatever it is. And they can kind of sell themselves out a little bit to... not like 2s in the way that they would help, but more, how am I seen as successful in this place, in this moment? And I think they sell themselves out first and craft that image second. So I don't necessarily think that 3s are a bunch of liars. I think that word deceit can be misunderstood. So rather than being in touch with their true self-image, they craft an image of a winner. And in that, they kind of leave themselves out of that. 3s kind of leave themselves out of their own hearts in a way. That's why they're the suppressed part of the heart triad, right? So part of their growth is to come back to the emotional side of them first, success, image second. Yeah, Marni's shaking her head.
That's the challenge.
So the passion in the Enneagram comes from the emotional body, and the fixation comes from the mental mind. It's a thought process. The fixation for the 3 is vanity, acquiring praise or admiration for the self. Anything that serves as a boost to the ego is basically the 3's fixation. And I think as we get into the subtype with you a little bit more, we'll see why it was tricky for you to possibly identify with that vanity one.
Yeah.
So the 3 that looks the most like a 3 is the social 3. And that's the one that would... a lot of Enneagram teachers say that Oprah Winfrey is a social 3. I actually think she's a 2. But somebody that would be really on a stage, right? Yeah. And they're okay with being in front of a crowd and just kind of constantly winning, accumulating wealth, influencing people. So
they couldn't put on this voice and
a persona, right? Absolutely. And so that 3 is the one that's kind of the most 3-ish, which Marni is the opposite of that one. And then the virtue or the coming home to for the 3 is honesty and looking past appearances or perceiving themselves to be a certain way and to just be honest first with themselves and then with the world second. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go through and ask Marni some questions so that we can get a real sense and flavor of what it's like to be inside of a 3. And then at the end, we'll go more, she might touch on it as she answers some of the questions, but then we'll go more into the subtypes later on just to kind of refine things a little more. So let's ask you, first of all, how important are goals to you? We mentioned that that was something that's really important to a 3. How does that fit you?
Yeah, so I'm very goal-oriented. I feel like to explain this like really well, give a good picture of this, is like every time I go away on like a vacation, even if it's for a couple days, just get like a little bit of a break. I come back and I'm in the car, if it's a road trip or on the plane, and I'm writing out like a new goals list because it's like this fresh start, and like I've just taken a break, I've just taken time off, I've just been in the being world. And it's like back to doing. Like I write a goals list every single time I come home from any kind of vacation or like break. And I'm like a list person, and I get really, really carried away with lists, and I know that about myself, so I have to be very careful. I make a list that's like 2 pages, like open, and it's like full.
After a vacation or every day?
No, this is like my weekly list.
Okay.
So I love lists.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be out on a date with my husband, and he'll be like, "Should we make a list?" And I'm like, "Ooh, yes. What should we make a list for?"
That's sexy.
Yeah. But so I have like the massive lists, and these are all goals I have to accomplish. And so if I just see like one check mark on there, it's like, like I need to see all of the check marks off, right? So what I have to do now is take 3 things or something like that, something manageable I can do that day, and put it into a new list and go, this is my list for today, and shut that list out. Because I will feel so crappy at the end of the day if I'm looking at the big list. But if I can look at the small list and see check marks on those 3 things, I'm good. I've accomplished my goals, and I have to accomplish my goal.
So it feels like a form of achievement for you to see those boxes ticked.
And it feels like I can finally move into the being instead of the doing. It's like I'm chugging along, and I am just trying to get it done so that I can check those things off and then move into, now I can be.
One of the things that I've read about 3s is that, and I wonder if you just kind of said this in a way, it's like, you got to get through this list, and you got to plow through and power through it, and then you can relax. Do you ever feel like you cut corners to get it done?
Yes. Yeah. I'll like make excuses sometimes. The goals thing is interesting because I'm super goal oriented, but I'm also willing to be like, oh, well, that one's not as important. You know, like I can let go of some things.
Because you like to have fun.
I do
You're
like to have
good
fun.
at having fun.
And we thought at the beginning I was like a 7.
Yeah.
Because I'm good at having fun.
You are.
Yeah. But I more so live in the 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought that's interesting because when we, who are not 3s, look at 3s, we always think, whoa, like they have everything together, and you know, they're pretty polished and organized. And so when you hear that 3s cut corners to get things done, that I think I understand that a little bit better now, is because if you're plowing through something to achieve it and be efficient and productive, that you might kind of miss some details along the way in order to get to the being.
Efficiency,
so I think that makes sense.
Efficiency is like, I would say, like my number 1. Like if I were to write on my resume, like, what are you really good at? I'm very efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. And I get irritated when things are not efficient. Right. And so that idea of like being a team player, I mean, I work good in teams, and I can, like the chameleon can, right? I can work and do those things, but I'd way rather just do it myself, because I know I'm going to do it the way I want to do it.
Do you hurt yourself sometimes when you do stuff on your own? Like, would it do you well to delegate a bit more?
Yes, okay. It would, but it's very hard for me to delegate. And so truth be told, I've tried to delegate, right? And I've done it, and it's like this, oh my gosh, let it go, and let's just see what happens, right? And I don't know if it's because it's like my nature of like that efficiency thing, like I need it done at a certain time.
Yeah.
But that timeline is very important to me. And so if I'm going to delegate, I need to know that you're going to get it done in a timely manner.
And does there have to be a certain amount of trust with the person that you're offloading responsibilities to?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
It's like quality control, and like in a lot of the things that I'm doing right now, it's quality control. And it gets me like kind of like, but it has to be done a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I figured that out. I've always kind of wondered like how that worked, but that makes sense.
Yeah. But I think something interesting too is like people will always say to me, "Oh, you're so like chill. You're so like low key." And I would never say I struggle with like anxiety. That's not something that like I struggle with. Stress, yeah, but like I can kind of manage, so it doesn't get into like anxiety.
And I think your industry helps with that, right?
100%.
Because you've pretty much gone to school to learn how to manage stress and to live a pretty chill life. So I think sometimes when we're in this industry, it's just we've learned how to do it. It's something that we've taught ourselves how to do. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
But people will say like, you look so chill. And then underneath it's like, oh yeah, super chill.
I remember seeing you at, I think it was the first Elevate where you did the, what's it called when you have all the people talk?
We Are Cochrane?
We Are Cochrane. And I was nervous for you. Like the whole Ranch House Theater was full and there was all these amazing people that were coming up to tell their story. And you just walked up there like, is this thing on? And you just like talked and welcome everybody, like confident and cool. And I don't even think maybe you had notes up there, but from where I was sitting, it just looked like, wow, like she just makes that look so easy. Yeah. And that's what you're feeling inside too?
I can recognize that's much easier for me than most people. Yeah. Like asking my husband to get up on stage, absolutely not. Like,
he's a great behind the scenes guy.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah. I need him.
Yeah, but that's your gifting, right? And I think you've really bloomed into that in this town for all of us, and we get to kind of reap all of that from you. So thank you. I think you may have already touched on this, but would you describe yourself as an overachiever? Kind of ties into the whole goals thing.
Yeah. Like a big part of my thing is I never feel like I'm doing enough. And so that makes me an overachiever because I'm constantly striving for approval and like that feeling of like
from
I'm
who?
enough.
Do you know who that is?
Well, it's when I feel like I'm not doing enough. I mean, I'm sure it boils down to the childhood wound, but yeah, I just feel like I could be doing more in service is like a big thing. I hate letting people down. And I feel like when there's something missing in like an organization or a business, I just want to go in there and like do it for someone, right? Yeah. I just want to get it done for them. And so it's like this, I see these like little holes and I just want to fill them.
So after you've completed something, say you've just, given birth to a whole Elevate, right? And it's done. It's over. Do you feel like I could have done something different? Oh, the other thing too is that 2s, 3s, and 4s all live in the shame triad. So I'll just kind of throw that at you as I ask you this question. After you've done something really big, it's accomplished, it's done, it's a humongous check mark, you've put it to bed, do you feel that you have not achieved or done enough from a place of you've let people down or it could have been better? Or is it more like a place of your own personal self?
I feel like if I'm going to put out Elevate, it's going to be at the best of my ability. And so
Does it ever feel not good enough?
No, and I feel like at the end of it, I'm going, wow, like that was really good. And I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But then, then I get the feedback and I go, oh, okay. Damn it. Yeah. There's tweaks, like most of it, it's like 90% is good. Or like 95% is good, but you get the few that are, not so good.
And do you kind of harbor in those a bit and get stuck on that?
Yeah, but I also see that as like a chance to grow. And so I always take that feedback and I change it for the next year.
It's more like gas to the fire of doing it better next year.
Yeah. And I come out of those weekends very motivated. Like I feel very like the energy of it. Yeah. There's definitely a tiredness, an exhaustion, but very motivated at the same time.
That's where Kevin comes in.
Yeah.
Your husband. So these are all kind of in the same vein, these questions. Do you relate to the word workaholic?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big problem for me, for sure. Yeah, I get very, very caught up in workaholism. And like it affects relationships in a big way, so.
Yeah, and the subtype that Marni is the most workaholic of the 3 types of 3s.
So that makes sense.
The one that kind of runs on fumes even, and can really put relationships and emotions, like she said, you know, she'll plow through something and then kind of be after. And relationships live in that being place, right? Relationships we don't really do. So if you are the workaholic person, you know, you would kind of like schedule a chat with a friend, right? Rather than just organically do that or be that.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah. I schedule those fun times and like be times.
And how have you kind of, like, if you acknowledge that you are a workaholic, what are some tips and tools that you've kind of picked up along the way that help just kind of keep that at bay so it doesn't rule you?
I have like this kind of like gauge where I can see it start to peak into like the unhealthy, where it's been interesting because of like with COVID, I've been very low work, and it's felt so good for me to just kind of do my tasks and then be done with them, and then just enjoy more time. And now I'm starting to see things ramp up, and the first thing is like my relationship with Kevin, where I don't pause for those like beautiful moments, or you know, I don't spend an extra amount of time cuddling him in the morning. You know, like those little things where I'm like, oh my gosh. And he'll be the first to say too, is there's disconnect. Like we're disconnected. And I go, uh-oh, like red flag. I need to focus on this.
And he would know that right away because he's a 9, right?
Away.
So he would have that kind of be like almost his first alert that would go off on him would be I'm disconnected.
But the beautiful thing is because we know each other and our numbers too, is that we can really help each other. Like those little signs.
Yeah, you guys both live in the inner triangle, so you bounce around on the inner triangle of the
We get each other, right? We do. And
you
so
can even
helpful.
be each other in energies at different times depending on what's going on. Yeah, it's fantastic. My parents are like that too. They're in the inner triangle and they can just kind of morph in and out.
Yeah, it's been super, super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask you about how COVID was for you. Do you feel like because we can't do things that it kind of relaxes you a little bit? It's like, well, I can't be super successful right now. I can't overachieve and I can't crush goals because, oh well, I have to stay home. It's COVID. Has that been just like the biggest gift?
Yeah, it gave me an excuse to just like
I call it the gift of COVID.
Yeah, and you know, it's actually sad because like in the past when I get sick, I honestly will be like so grateful. Like, thank you for giving me this sign. I need rest.
Slow down.
Yeah, this is like a big sign. My body is literally shutting down.
Yeah.
How did I not notice those little tiny, you know, clues? So it is like when I'm sick, I fully embrace it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so as I mentioned, the 2s, 3s, and 4s all live in the image triad. 2s are trying to maintain the image of looking like they're helpful in service to others. 4s are looking like they're trying to maintain the image of being unique or individuals. And 3s are trying to maintain the image of looking successful and achieving. Do you relate to that? Does that kind of strike anything for you? What's your thought on image?
Success, like to have the image of success, I think is important to me. And this idea that we live in a 3 culture can be a little bit challenging because when people see what I'm doing from the outside, they go, wow, you're doing so much. You must be doing so well. Like, you know, they're kind of envious, and I'm going, oh, like, you know, it's okay. Like, I'm not doing that great, you know? And so to see that, the success, like they're sharing, like, oh, you're so successful, then it does kind of make me feel good. Like, oh, okay, I'm doing well, but I don't necessarily feel it because it's that idea of like I'm not doing enough.
You could always do more.
I could always do more. Yeah.
So what is your definition of success? What does successful mean to you? Because I think it's different for all of us. It's not. I think sometimes we think it's financial, right? Like you have a big fancy house, and it's not always that.
Yeah, I struggled with that one because you gave me that question ahead of time. And I think this is like where I've done a lot of my work, a lot of like my, you know, inner work and self-study is what is successful to me, because I think when I think about like the route I was going on in university, very much like kind of chugging along and just trying to get like, I wanted to get the best job, and I wanted to be like super an enviable job, you know, like something that's like really cool. And
what did you study in university again?
International community development.
Okay.
So I wanted to work in like the UN and like stuff like that, where like my sister's doing that now. Yeah. And I'm going, oh, phew. But like I wanted that hard work, but like also just kind of like even corporate. Like I would have been that for sure. But then what happened was like my father died, and that changed everything. So when you're talking about how usually there's something like health or, you know, something in the family, like that is what happened for me. Is my father died, and it just changed everything. And so my idea of success started to shift into not what I was constantly working to for like my work and what that idea of success, but more like enjoy my life. Like it's got to be a fun life. Yeah. And one of my favorite things, and I said it in my vows when me and Kevin got married, was like when I asked him like, what's the meaning of life for you? He goes, to have fun. And when I first heard that, I was like, that's so shallow. Yeah. That's so silly. But I'm like, that is the meaning of life. Just to have fun. Like we only have just a small amount of time on this earth, so let's make the most of it. So success is really just to like live a really good life.
Some Enneagram teachers and theorists will say that the childhood wound, that we can still be shaping our personality structure as late as age 25, like 20 in there, like as the brain is still kind of forming. And I wonder for you, and I don't know, you might, I wonder if for you, you kind of had a childhood wound shift when your dad died. Like if the way you kind of perceived the world, because you were young enough. How old were you when your dad passed away? 20, yeah. So right in that really crucial time of where things kind of might just get cemented in terms of personality structure, yours might have still been malleable enough that may have kind of taken a little bit of a detour. I don't know. That's something for you maybe to
because
wonder.
when I mean that's like a before and an after that's very clearly marked in my life, right? And when I think about who I was before that, it's very
driven. I'm going to get a power job. I'm in university.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of went, wait a second.
Yeah. And then I started to do the yoga path, right? And way more like self-development work, and just like went head first into that world.
Yeah. So the childhood wound for the type 3 is that, and so for all 9 types, it's how we become disconnected from love somehow, or disconnected from source and the divine. And for the 3, it's the misunderstanding. Chris Hewitts talks about rather than calling it the childhood wound, he calls it the childhood misunderstanding. And I like that because it kind of lets our parents off the hook a little bit more, because I think, you know, us as parents are just like, oh my gosh, like what did I do to wound my children?
Well, and I didn't have a bad upbringing. I had great parents,
and
right?
a lot
but
of people
the
report
misunderstanding
that. It's the
part.
childhood misunderstanding of they believed that they had to be achieving something or successful or good at something to then earn that love. And so without that, they feel like they're not worthy of the love. It kind of gets cut off from them. So I'm curious, and maybe we can chat about it later as you kind of process more of this material, but it might be something to think about, like how was I in terms of my childhood misunderstanding, and then you have that, the Enneagram calls it a shock point. So your whole family would have had a shock point where you were then unchanged, and it bounced you. So the Enneagram's triadic, right? There's something reactive, passive, and reconciling. And so you would have maybe had this passive part that put you into reaction that now you can reconcile, and you're different and changed because of it.
And if you were to ask like my mom or my sister who I was before and after, like night and day. Like I was not someone that you could like hug. Like my parents used to like joke about how like they couldn't touch me, like no kiss, no hug. No, and like not
and that's
very
a 3
affectionate.
thing. They're quite cool.
Yeah.
Right? 3s can be cool and
Yeah.
not aloof, but it's like, here's me and there's you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like the resting bee face.
Yeah. We've talked about that. We've both have
Yeah,
it. So.
which I'm very aware of now, so I try
Same.
to smile more.
Me too.
But like in high school, people thought I was a jerk. Like
Unapproachable.
Unapproachable.
Yeah.
Like they were scared of me. I got that all the time. Oh, you're so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Or after graduation and stuff like that. Oh, I was always so scared of you. I'm going, why? It's because I was very unapproachable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I didn't go into like that feeling for, so I wasn't vulnerable. And then my dad died, and it's like, ooh, here I am. Heart open, like, I'll hug you, and, you know, I'll smile for you, and I'll make you feel comfortable. And so there's been some shifts, but like, so my 3 has evolved in a big way with that self-development. And with yoga, like it's the self-study that I find to be the most impactful part of yoga.
That's the biggest gift of yoga, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah,
it really
because
is.
we get to study ourselves on our yoga mats in a physical way that helps with the emotional layers.
Yeah.
Especially if you're wired in a way to be more restrained. Like emotions aren't really useful or needed.
Yeah.
And it really helps to move energy around to feel things that you wouldn't maybe ordinarily dig down into. And also just community with others with like-mindedness. And, you know, we kind of bring out our best selves by gathering in circles and doing just things like this and the work that you do. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I've had to shift the way I do my yoga, how I teach, because when I first came out, I was like, the 3 in me was like, I've got to be the best yoga teacher. I want to be like well-known yoga teacher. I've got to be, you know, I want to be yoga girl, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And that was taking me further and further away from like what the essence of what yoga really was for me. And for me, it was medicine. And also with like the physical, like part of the yoga is I can see myself sometimes going into like the, almost like punishing my body, you know, like the working out part of it. And I have to be really, really careful about that because for me now, like a major shift is just yoga is not my workout. It cannot be. And so I will work out. I'll do a HIIT class. I'll run. I'll do those things. Yoga is sacred. It's over here. Because I will take my 3 in that and I'll go, I'm going to be the best at this. I had the same hard lesson. Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap up this part 1 right here, and then we'll pick it up in part 2 to ask Marni a few more questions and to explore the subtypes of the type 3.